relationship. The energy fields or vital body, etheric double of the physical, is the source of our supply of life force. It is that which animates all things and makes them alive. This aliveness is primarily turned downward. It is the aliveness, the vitality, which protects the body and makes it capable of receiving into itself stress and strain from higher causes within its own structure. Now, the vital body being an energy field, the individual who wishes to advance in spiritual matters must reduce energy pressures. They must not waste energy, because energy is life, and life is the power of God in us. Therefore, energy must be conserved. Energy must be distributed properly. We come almost under a heading of physical culture here. We have to see that the energy field is given ample opportunity to express itself constructively, but that any intemperance which wastes energy becomes a leakage in the energy field, and through this leakage it escapes and is not available for reasonable purposes. Energy to be maintained must have proper nutrition. It must have proper rest and relaxation. It must be energized by a physical body that is temperate and therefore does not waste or destroy energy. Energy cannot live unless the physical body is reasonably ordered. If it is reasonably ordered, then it can provide a proper footing for energy growth. But if the individual suddenly gets into a temper fit, the waste of energy damages both the vital body and the physical. The individual in hysteria, the person who is constantly a neurotic, the individual who starts worshiping energy waste, doing things that are not significant and not important. All energy is to be used for constructive purposes in order that energy, which is life, a part of which has been given to us, will be used as it was intended to be used, for the greater good of all that lives. All energy which has not some justification in value becomes a dangerous factor in our composition. So energy enables us to do all kinds of useful things. It also will support us in extreme hardships in many cases. But it cannot stand or survive misdirection from below or wrong attention from above. It must be given the care and discipline necessary. Energy discipline involves one important factor: quietude. Quietude means that the human body must at certain times rest. If the energy does not remove its pressures from the body, then the body cannot rest, and the least we can expect is fidgets, and they are no good either. The individual who can't sit still, who can't keep quiet, who finds it impossible to do simple things in a simple and efficient manner, the individual has to exaggerate all actions, and finding themselves highly nervous, must take a sedation. This type of thing is deadly to the development of any higher faculties. If the individual wishes to remain on the level in which these things are done, he has the right. No one can take it from him. But if he wants to be better than he is now, he must correct the mistakes that burden him now. He must have motives, purposes, and ideals stronger and better than those which he has been nursing in the past. So he does everything possible to use energy wisely. He may feel that it is an eternal factor, that he will always have it, but he will find that this is a mistake. If he wastes it, he will not always have it. The body is itself a fallible thing, and to make it useful, helpful, and constructive as long as possible, its essential resources must be conserved. One of the physical forces and sources of energy is nutrition. So this comes into this pattern. Proper nutrition. Nutrition that is not fatty. Nutrition that is based upon, as far as possible, a full understanding of the requirements of the body and its nervous structure. Nutrition is very important because without it, the individual has no foundation upon which to build. Therefore, the first problem is to get the body into physical condition that is suitable to become a living temple. And the second step of the problem is to create within this living temple an atmosphere of divine presence, the energy being the presence of the infinite within the structure of the finite. And then if it is accomplished, if the individual finds that he is able to make these corrections and never waste energy, wasting energy can be simply the support of a poor cause. It can be talking too much when there's nothing to say. It can be almost anything. On the other hand, the loss of these wastefulness factors should never result in a dowerful personality. The energy factors that are constructive are pleasant, more pleasant in the long run than those which cause trouble. But then we rise to the third level, and this is a rough one of the most difficult to face, and not to be faced at all unless the lower two have already been conquered. You cannot advance unless you're on a solid foundation of what goes before. Otherwise, you're in trouble. The energy factor we have to have, and one of the great uses of energy, of course, is emotion. Now, the emotional factor is where, in most cases, the human being is oriented. He lives in a combination of vital, emotional, and physical factors. And as long as this continues, he is basically a biped, but still not raised to human estate. The energy fields that involve emotion must be cleansed and purified. Emotions must be free of all negative, toxic attitudes. This is where most people fall down. I know we have cases constantly of people who are trying to develop spiritual overtones of life, who spend their lives seeking for truth and hating each other. This won't work. Any individual who expects to get anywhere in religion has got to give up hating anything or anyone. He may not want to cultivate that person. He may not feel that that person is right. But the moment he uses emotional energy negatively, he is destroying himself and not the other person. Any destructive attitude of the emotions must be corrected. Emotions must be open, constructive, idealistic, and be no more nor less than that which is recommended in the Sermon on the Mount. The very point of this is clearly revealed in Christian doctrine, but there are very few Christians that manage to make it, because there are very few people in this world, including Christian sects, that like each other. This problem of constant competition of feelings, the tremendous aggressiveness of ambitions, the determination to get back at someone, or to go on moaning through life because of a tragedy, misery, misfortune that has occurred. The person who is emotionally disturbed a large part of the time will not get any further. In fact, he won't even reach this level successfully. He won't reach it because the entire magnetic field, the various chakra centers and so forth involved in development cannot react constructively to negative human attitudes. The individual can assume that he is going to make it anyway, and he is going to try perhaps and find a teacher who will help him to be enlightened without correcting these faults. But he will find in the long run that he has simply deceived himself. There is no answer to improvement except to improve. There is no way of being better than we are now except by becoming better than we are now. And if we want to be more than we are now, we must build upon a foundation of solid achievement. Otherwise, the entire problem becomes a travesty. Now, in religious organizations, we find a tendency, especially in modern times, to overlook or gloss over lightly these problems of conduct in relationship to spiritual growth. We are more or less invited to believe that if the person joins a religious organization, this does it. That if the individual gets up and claims that he is going to be a good Christian or a good Buddhist or a good Brahmin or a good Jew, that the affirmation does it. This is not true. The individual is never any better than his own conduct. He is never more advanced or more spiritual than the dignity of his attitudes toward life. Therefore, in the problem of searching for a teacher, we have to realize that our ulterior motives must be very clearly and carefully found out and corrected. Why are we looking for the teacher? Most people have very simple answers. I got a letter not long ago. The individual said, I've been miserable all my life, I'm half sick and I'm neurotic, and I want a way out to something better. Well, now that's a common kind of appeal, and you respect it. It is something to respect. But the only way this individual can get what they want is to change themselves. And anyone who promises to give them enlightenment without correcting their faults is themselves deceived or unaware of the facts. How can we change a person who is resolutely determined to stay as he is? How are we going to correct the condition or the faults of a person who is perfectly willing to correct his virtues a little more, but will not for one moment change his faults? Now, faults are funny things. On a personal level, they've broken more homes probably than any other factor in history. Second place probably is religious conflict, then political conflict, then racial strife, then national misfortunes. Everywhere in the world, man looks for peace, but he expects to achieve it by overcoming his enemy. We are right now in a heavy political situation all over the world. We are faced with the danger of a great war to create peace. And this is what happens in nations, and it happens in the individual. We cannot be happier than we are unless we earn a happiness greater than that which we have now. We cannot get over our troubles unless we correct the causes of them. And this is an esoteric doctrine that has sent the yoga student and the Zen man into the mountains for centuries, to fight this out, to come to the final conclusion that you have to be right or you will continue to suffer. Now, rightness in the case of emotions is, as you have realized, the Bodhisattva doctrine of Northern Asia is the doctrine of the love principle. Christ says to love our enemies. And now it's mostly impossible to get along with our friends, let alone our enemies. We are expected to do these things, not read about them. We are expected to look around through our own lives and say, this is a messy spot and I've got to clean it up. Or I haven't spoken to my brother in 20 years, it's now time to get around to it. Well, so he writes his brother, and his brother doesn't answer. Well, that's too bad. But he has done what he could. He tried. He must make the first step. If the other person doesn't accept that first step, he can't help. I made that suggestion to a man not too long ago who had a cousin who he had not spoken to for years. And I suggested write the cousin and find out. So he wrote a card. I think he wrote a birthday card. He remembered the birthday of the cousin. He got a 15-page letter back. The cousin had been waiting for years to try to make it up and didn't know how. So these are the things that happen. We cannot do anything unless we try. And in the emotional level, we have to try to get away from hurting anyone. Because as we go on hurting others, we hurt ourselves the most. Now this is where many people get into trouble. They cannot get away from a certain negative reaction to society around them. This is largely due, of course, to the condition of society. No one questions that. But this condition of